What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North. I'm Walker, and back here with all the boys. Back together, guys. It's nice to see everybody's smiling faces. Drew, Thomas, Ed, and coming off a big weekend because this past weekend was a Formula One True North watch party at Ferrari Toronto. And there was a race, which was, by all accounts, pretty decent.
It's lights out and away we go.
Really quickly to get us started, I want to get one word from everybody to describe this weekend's race. One word, one sentence. Drew, start us off.
Vamos.
Well, that's a good one. That came quick too, because I didn't
took it from me.
I didn't even tell him about that question. That was quick. Okay, vamos. Explain yourself.
After that, what else do I need to say? Carlos Sainz won the race. What are we talking about? We got Spanish on Spanish love going down in the Mexican GP this weekend. Just want to give a big shout out to the Scuderia Ferrari of Toronto who hosted our watch party, which was awesome. We had a bunch of people there, lots of pizza coming out from our man Joe, just slinging the dough. I was all about that this weekend. So my personal trainer wants to thank you for adding an extra 2 pounds that I got to lose this week and get back down to my goal weight. So, yeah, big shout out to him. But yeah, it was a good time, man.
Billable hours for your PT.
Oh, yeah, he's pumped about it.
Yeah, he's loving it.
Yeah, he's loving it.
Amazing. Well, the Spanish need somebody to cheer for this weekend, so at least they had Carlos. Ed,
hell yeah.
Let's hear it, buddy. Who do you got? What do you got?
Penalties.
Okay.
Also another good word. Okay.
All right.
You also have to explain yourself.
Well, it was a good packed weekend of just like, I would say it would probably even be the race of the season for me. Like all the action, all the things that you need in a race was there. But to top it all off, like the penalties, which we'll probably get into later in the episode.
Yeah, oh yeah, more than probably.
But yeah, it was, for me, that was the highlight. And well, Drew took Vamos from me, but yeah,
Thomas,
it was a good race.
What do you got?
I got textbook quality entertainment right there, because that's all this race was. It was full-on entertainment. I think it was the best race of the season. And yeah, it was just really entertaining to watch.
I mean, that's 3 words, but
I will put it all to one. So
yeah, I just won't press the space bar, bro.
It's the Lithuanian allowance.
Yeah,
exactly. My word for this race is going to be serendipitous, because I feel like everyone got exactly what they deserved. I feel like all the pieces kind of fell right where they were supposed to, and I feel like there's no better place to start or to carry on from that than talking about the penalties. Let's dive right into it, because this has been a hot topic for a couple of weeks. I know you guys covered it last week on the podcast, and we kind of had a bit of deja vu between Max and Lando. Max got slammed with a couple of big penalties, 20 seconds. Later added on a couple of demerit points, let's call him that, off of his license, racing license as well. Do you think that was deserved, given the circumstances, Drew?
It was same, but different, right? Last weekend was much of the same stuff, but we had a different outcome. And the outcome was different from my understanding because Max also left the track. And that is what changed between last week and this week. I am very much under the impression that the rules do need to change. I've been informed from the glorious internet that the drivers had a very long chit chat, and George Russell let it slip that 19 out of the 20 drivers are okay with making a mid-season rule change by Qatar. So the penultimate race of the year is going to have a little bit of a different rule set in order to clarify what's going on. So from my understanding, the 2022 rules and the 2024 rules are different because it lacks clarity in what happens to the car overtaking off track, and if that car has completed its turn, its braking, its maneuver, on the track that it gets to keep it. So I don't know if this is a case of Max understanding the rules and exploiting it, or if it's just a case of, this time I want to do it on the very first lap, so I might get a little lenience out of the stewards. I don't know, but I think that justice was served. I don't think that Max should be penalized any more or any less than anyone else. And I think, now that Max doesn't have the most dominant car on the grid, I have definitely seen him fall back into some of his old ways. But I think that Max is still an aggressive driver. He's just been out front by 15 to 20 seconds to the point where we started an over-under. Like, we had a weekly over-under on whether or not Max was going to finish 20 seconds in front of everyone else. He doesn't need to do those dirty moves when that's happening. Now that he doesn't have a competitive car, and there might arguably be two cars better than his right now, he's definitely getting a little bit dirtier, but that's Max, and he hasn't changed much since he started driving. So, it is what it is. But yeah, I think it was a very interesting race, and I think that the stewards handed out the penalties fast enough that it didn't change things later on, and I think that was a big difference in how the FIA handled stuff.
Ed, what are your take on penalties?
Well, for me, it was felt like the FIA or the stewards were trying to play catch up from Coda, because everyone was in uproar on the interwebs about what Max Verstappen did at the start of the race and within the last 10 laps of the race as well. And Drew has a really strong point there. Like, the rules in itself was very lax and can be subject to interpretation. And on top of all of that, the penalty used to be 5 seconds for running off the track, but now, or rather for 2024, because of it not being that much of a penalty, they bumped it up to 10. So if we had gone back to the 2022 rules, then Max would only have a maximum of 10 from those two infractions. But from the point of view of Max, though, like, as I've said in the Discord, which, by the way, shout out to everyone else in the Discord, if he's not pushing, then definitely, like, he's not going to try to edge out his competitors, namely Lando, or the rest of the field as well. And as to Drew's point as well, like, the car's not competitive. RB20 is pretty much, handicapped, and there might be an issue too that they might have to replace the engine, because he was complaining a lot about pace during FP1, FP2, and even during quali. But regardless of all of that, like, yeah, it was. I felt like it was fair, but I felt bad for Max too, because, like, that's racing at the end of the day.
Is it, though? Is it? That's the question. I don't know. Thomas, was it racing, or what was it for you?
You know what? I think the penalties were well deserved for Max. As to what Drew and Ed said, what happened last race was a little bit of a shit show. So I think stewards reacted fast enough, and they handed him a big enough penalty to the point where it's not a 5-second penalty where he won't be able to catch up really quickly. It's to the point where it had an impact on him and his position and how his race went. So I think that was very fair played by the stewards. I think that should have happened last race as well. And again, to both of your points, when he's not ahead, he starts playing dirty and racing, and this was unfortunately dirty racing. So what he did, I don't agree. I don't condone it. I think the penalty was well deserved and well enforced.
So I have a question then. Drew, you started off by saying it was same but different. To me, it was the same move that he did last week at Coda. Last week at Coda, he didn't get a penalty. This week he did. He left the track on both occasions. So based on the rules that you kind of highlighted, which I think you interpreted them correctly, because, I wasn't aware of this prior to someone else bringing it up as well, is that there's nothing preventing the defending car from staying on track either, right? There's no provision in there that says, they can push you wide, but they have to stay on track. all 8 wheels from both cars left the track. So what is the difference between this week and last week? And was it kind of a bit of retroactive refereeing where they try to make up for what they thought was not done correctly? But to me, the moves looked the same. Was it the fact that Lando didn't get an advantage off this move, that he kind of held back and stayed back this time? I'm just trying to, because it seems like it's inconsistent marshalling, right? If one should have been a penalty, they both should have been. And I guess this is one of the issues that you run into when you have different marshals and different stewards for different races, but you either penalize all of them or you penalize none of them.
I'm with you on that. I think that there's, it has to be black and white, because the gray area is where the interpretation gets left up to the stewards. And when you have, like you mentioned, when you have different stewards at different places, it's good because it creates a sense of sportingness and fairness, but ultimately it doesn't create black and white answers for when the same thing happens on 2 different tracks at 2 different times and you get 2 different results. And that's what's frustrating, I think, for both the drivers, the teams, and I guess the fans as well, right? Because, we don't know what to do and what to say. Back to your point on this specific case, do I think it's because Lando gained an advantage? I think, or didn't gain an advantage? I think that might be the case. I also thought the same thing you did. Is this like some version of like retroactive, like, hey, we kind of screwed up last time, so let's double penalize Max this time to kind of like say, hey, we're sorry, but like this is what we should have done last time kind of idea? Yeah, I did. I actually thought about that too. I was like, oh, they're handing him a freebie because it was a bad call. It happens in sports all the time. But I think the reality is that like, the drivers also, like when George Russell came out and said that 19 out of the 20 drivers agreed to the rule change like almost immediately after Brazil, that says to me that the drivers are also frustrated with this because, George is in the back, he's getting penalties, everyone's getting handed out these penalties because they think they know the rules, and then it changes track to track. And so I think that there needs to be some sort of sporting fairness blanketed across everybody. Everyone needs to understand the rules, the new rules, whatever you want to call them, and then race based on those guidelines.
So, okay, you guys are in the room, you're in the driver's meeting, you're the FIA. What do you do to these rules? What changes do you make to make them clear and fair? Big question. Who wants to go?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question.
I know, it's a tough question.
You had the answer. I thought you had the answer.
I wrote down in the Discord that I had the answer, but I was lying. I actually don't have the answer. It was all talk. It was all talk.
We are going to take this as a moment to plug the Discord. If you guys haven't checked that out yet, jump into the Discord. The link will be in the show notes. It's in every one of our show notes on Spotify and in YouTube. It's a bunch of cool people talking F1 all the time. So jump in there. We'd love to have you. And we discuss things just as crazy as this. And Walker does lie, both in person and on
constantly.
Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. Just constant lies happening in the Discord for me personally.
Fake news.
Stirring the pot.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's such a difficult rule to enforce because I was thinking about it and I had all these ideas. And at the time, maybe I had the solution. Then I thought about it more. I was like, no, that's a dumb idea, Walker, because it's not going to actually address core issues, or it creates other issues, right? Because there's the apex rule, right? There's pushing people off track. There's how you defend. There's how you, there are so many nuances, and trying to create a rule that draws a line between, for lack of a better term, we'll call it dirty driving and competitive driving is really, really hard. So all my ideas sucked. So does anyone have any ideas in here? Anything? Let's throw it out there. Let's solve this problem together.
Oh, man. I think that the maneuver needs to be completed. Whoever's doing the overtaking, whoever's defending, the move needs to be done on track. Like, I think if Lando was going around the outside and Max had the inside, instead of him just like breaking so deep that Lando has no way of around and that protecting his place, I think the defending car needs to have the move done on track. And that means keeping one little stinky tire over the white line in order for that to be considered a complete move. And I think if both drivers go off, then they come back on track the way they went into that corner.
But then if they both go off track, then that really doesn't penalize the person braking late. I think keeping your car on track as a defending driver has to be the starting point.
Yes.
You know,
I agree
I
with
think that has to. I don't think you can defend and then go off track and then expect to keep that place. I think if both cars go off, then it's fair game at that point, right? It's a race to get back on track. That's as far as I got.
Yeah, because that leads out to so many other things. Because you're like, okay, well, now I try to defend my place. I'm off track. Now I'm just going to drive straight through the grass, take the shortest distance, and then I'll just get back on track because that's the fastest way. And I'm already off track. So, like, I can't get penalized for it because I was defending my position, whatever. This is a super gray area, and I don't know if there's an answer. I am not jealous of the FIA in any way, shape, or form of having to come up with a rule in right now.
And then I started going through, I started thinking of, okay, like video games. Sometimes when you're racing video games and you go off track and then your engine kind of gets killed for like 2 seconds, maybe there's like an automatic kill switch, right? Which is like kills you or decreases your power. Maybe
like a
be turning
penalty?
into Formula E though at that point, where it's like
maybe instead of penalties, because this is going to turn into a whole other thing. Because then you saw what happened with Max. He had 20 seconds, and then he's just holding up Lando, right?
Correct.
He's playing that game. He's playing the K-Mag game. So maybe instead of a 10-second penalty, your engine power should just be killed for a lap, 2 laps. Something like that.
Oh, like give you like
reduce
80% power or whatever.
80% power.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. Anyways, this is really difficult, guys.
No, actually, that is a sound idea because, and shouting out to the race league that I'm actually in right now in Gran Turismo 7, the Addicted Racing League. When you actually incur a penalty or you're off track, there is a certain point within the track wherein you have to pass a gate. And yes, your engine slows down for a considerable amount of time. So imagine if, let's say, if they can actually approve it, which I think they can, if they get out in issues of either pushing another person or track limits or whatnot, the moment they pass through that certain gate for the penalty, like the engine will like slow down. Sounds great. But here's the other side of the coin on that one. If you're slowing down when you're battling, someone's behind you, and your car immediately slows down, then you might cause a collision. But I agree with that one because now it's out of the hands of the FIA. Whoever is calling the rules or whoever is calling the penalties would. I think the next thing would be like a really good camera on different areas, which I assume they have tons of cameras right now in any race, and that would be able to, they would be able to like just really look at the footage and then impose that penalty, because at this point, like it is a gray area. I mean, the apex rule is the apex rule. Whoever gets to that corner, their front tire or the rear tire, there's an area within the corner in itself that you own the corner. And if you don't, then of course, like the dive bombing or the defending or like pushing the other person off the track would be the best thing for you to keep your place. So it's difficult at this point because the stewards are also human as well. They can't really make that decision on the fly, and they have to keep on rolling back the tape to make sure that it is a sound judgment. So it's
Thomas,
very difficult.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
No. Just because there's so much suggestions that we can throw out and what to do and what not to do, but it becomes such a gray area. So what would work and what wouldn't work, I don't have that perfect idea. There's between what Ed said, or Drew said, between cutting off the engine, you have to make sure you go between a certain point. Those are ideas, but then again, we would get into another gray area. Essentially, what would count as going through the a certain point, or for how long the engine should be cut off, why for that amount of time. So I don't have an idea or suggestion how we can make this better. I'm glad I'm not an FIA. I'm not a steward, because that seems like a very, very difficult task for them to come up, and how they're going to fix that rule change. So I don't envy them, but it does need to be fixed. It needs to be more consistent. It cannot be essentially that gray. It has to be what Drew said, black and white. Simple as that.
Maybe we should use AI.
I do have one lasting thought on this before we move on, unless anyone else has anything to add. And that is, maybe it's not the rules that are inherently the problem. Maybe it's just the drivers. Maybe it's just like there are a crop of like, maybe it's the sportsmanship. Let's put it that way. Right. And there's a mentality where now just because you can get away with something that you do, right? Just because you can dive bomb and force someone and brake late. And we're using this obviously as an example. We're using Max and this as an example. Maybe it's just there's a certain level of sportsmanship that's missing right now amongst a certain crop of drivers. And we can talk about overtaking and Max. We can talk about Liam Lawson and Checo and him like throwing the finger like down like the straight, right? I don't know how you guys feel about that. We can get into that a little bit. Maybe it's just almost like a bit of I don't want to use this word, but like a culture shift, right? Where, you get back to like really hard competitive racing, but that doesn't mean you're reckless. And maybe there's just an air of recklessness that drivers feel like they can get away with. Maybe it's the bigger cars. Maybe they feel a little bit more invincible. Maybe because they're safer. Maybe 30 years ago you try this shit and you flip a car and you die. Right. And now that doesn't happen.
That was my question, Walker, was like, you brought up a great point, is that like, is this just a new era of drivers? And my immediate question to that is, what changed? Like, what has changed in Formula One to entice this era, this generation of driver to want to drive as recklessly as this or as aggressive as this? And is it because they've just understood the rules and they've just interpreted them differently and been able to run with that? Or is it a deeper issue of, money, the way that the teams are pushing to, every championship point has more and more money and money on the table. Everything has to do with that, right? So like, is it, I don't know. I guess that's just a bigger, broader question, right?
Yeah, we're not going to figure that out right now, but
No.
Let's move on. Let's change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the winners of the day. Let's talk about Ferrari, because they deserve a lot of love right now and a lot of attention. You guys had the watch party at Ferrari, cheering on Ferrari. That place must have been going nuts. Talk about the atmosphere a little bit there, and tell us what was happening at this watch party with Ferrari in the lead.
The excitement was palpable. I, however, made a huge cataclysmic mistake by wearing all McLaren gear to Scuderia Ferrari of Toronto, which will never happen again.
Yeah, what was up with that?
You know what? It's not your only mistake.
That is such a loaded comment. I'm so intrigued.
You know who was too pumped up for the race? 3 o'clock race, eh? Advertising 3 o'clock race. Yeah.
Let me tell you that I was telling everybody the race started at 3 o'clock, and it very well didn't. And I think most people in that room knew the start of the race time except me. So that was my bad, but whatever. I'm over it. But yeah, you know what? Having a room full of diehard Ferrari fans, plus the F1 True North listeners and families and friends of the pod, we could definitely feel the excitement. It was a lot of fun. It was really nice to see Ferrari catch a W at Ferrari, which is always nice, and I think it was well earned. Ferrari has been making some sneaky moves over the last little bit, and even if by making a sneaky move, they're making no moves, I think that car is showing its true pace by not trying to overcomplicate things and add new upgrades to do this and do that and fix all this fancy business. Because you see the likes of McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull all adding new parts and coming up with these quote unquote upgrades, and they're falling short in a big way, right? So it's nice to see Ferrari stick to their guns and pull out another victory back to back, and also no hitches in their strategy calls and their pits and all of the things that wrap around a fast driver. I guess aside from Charles Leclerc almost binning it on the final few laps there, because that was a little scary.
Yeah, that much I could say. Like that last corner before he hit the wall, he was really pushing. Like he wanted to get away from Lando, but yeah, man, kudos to the Ferrari team, and just like I think it's more towards trusting their drivers at this point. Like they've squeezed as much upgrades and the engineering side of things. Now they're really trusting the drivers. They're probably listening to them more in terms of inputs on what needs to get done in terms of like an adjustment. But in itself, the pace is there. They're cornering. They're being able to be the competitive car for 2 straight weekends without any upgrades. Fantastic. I mean, I had my doubts for the entire season for when Lewis Hamilton comes over to Ferrari next year. But this is looking good. So hopefully they maintain. Yeah, Red Bull's now out of the constructors because of what's happening with Checo. And now even Max too. So fantastic, strong, and a strong performance for Ferrari.
Yeah, this race was definitely something else. It was insane. And yet, I'm kind of bummed what's gonna happen next year. Essentially, in a way, how Lewis is moving to Ferrari and Carlos Sainz is leaving Ferrari. I'm still gonna stick to my my voice of reason, saying Carlos Sainz for Ferrari right now, he drives like he has nothing to lose. And in reality, he has nothing to lose. He's pushing this car. He's showing what he's capable of. And it's a little bit of a shame that he's going to Williams. And I think his performance is going to drop significantly. With Lewis Hamilton coming into Ferrari, I don't think we're going to see that much excitement at first, just because he would, new team, new car, etc. So it's going to take some time for him to build up. But nonetheless, amazing race, fantastic result. That little scare with Charles Leclerc at the end. We all held our breaths at that when we were watching that live. But glad it worked out, and happy with the result.
Yeah, the gasps in the room when that happened. Everyone was like, no. But yeah, it was an exciting area.
I love that consistency that Ferrari is operating with right now. And I love the confidence. And it's not showy. There's no drama. They're just going out there and they're just racing well, right? Week after week, they're qualifying well. They're just putting all the pieces together, right? No flash, no drama. Yeah, Charles, sure, a few laps left, but that's just hard racing, and that's just him pushing, right? But I think that's what I love to see, and I'm excited for next year, and I think Lewis is probably excited for next year. Mid-season, they had a bit of a run, and we were like, oh, is he second guessing it? Maybe Ferrari's going to have the car, but no, they've kind of fallen back a bit now. And for Carlos, I'm glad he had a win. I'm actually surprised it's only his third win. I feel like the way we talk about him sometimes, you would expect him to have more wins on the sheet. And then they said that. I was like, oh, that's actually not as many as I would have expected. But I'm happy for him. I'm actually excited to see him at Williams. Have you guys heard the High Performance podcast? You guys listen to that?
I do not, sir.
No?
I need another podcast to listen to like a fucking hole in the head.
Check it out, because they do these. I've watched 2 of them so far on YouTube.
Oh, so you're all the way down the rabbit hole.
I'm all the way down there, all 2 of them. But what they do, the 2 I've watched it, they've interviewed James Vowles, and they've interviewed Otmar Schnaff. Someone finish it for me.
Otmar Schnaffhausen.
That's the one. That's the one. So they're big on the team principles and things like that. Anyways, the ones with James Vowles is A, his story is super interesting, and B, the way that he's approaching rebuilding Williams and kind of taking it to that next level is really inspiring. I wouldn't bet against them. So he might have a bit of a tough time, but I think Carlos really has a chance to kind of go into that team and shape the team around him and the way that he likes to drive, and really have an influence on how they develop that car. So anyways, I'd love to see Ferrari with the 1-2. I love the way they're operating. I love that they are adding a third team to that Constructors Championship, and it's going to be great. Can't wait for the rest of the races. Exciting?
I'm looking at the way Alex Albon is, I guess, kind of feeling towards Carlos Sainz coming to Williams is very similar to Charles Leclerc, how he feels about having Lewis Hamilton come to the team. I bet you Albon and Charles are feeling very similarly that.
It's going to be interesting to see how Albon takes the heat, because so far with Colapinto putting up some decent performances, Albon has looked a little shaky.
Shaky, bud.
And that's after a lot of praise saying, he's a great driver, et cetera, et cetera. But now he's got some competition. I think, Thomas, you posted a meme about that or something like that not too long ago. I was like, nailed it, man. Like he's looking a little shaky. So
yeah, that's what happened at Red Bull. Like when he was teammates with Max, he got like pushed away. That same year, he got sacked. He went into DTM, I believe.
Well, I feel
Yeah,
most
like,
people. I
that's
feel like
Albon.
most people give Max's teammates a bit of a pass because I feel like everyone's gotten destroyed as his teammate for the most part. But speaking of destroyed, let's talk about just the Red Bull Visa Cash App family, because they are in a tough spot.
They had a not great weekend.
Not a great weekend for anybody, including Checo. What a disappointing way to run what's probably going to be your last home Grand Prix.
Yeah, he fumbled the ball big time.
Mm-hmm.
That is a bad fumble, dude.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's go back to your original point, because I think the V-carb conversation is very interesting right now, especially as it relates to Checo's seat. Because you got somebody like Yuki Tsunoda, and I was listening to a podcast. I think it's one of the Formula One's official podcasts. But they were talking about, having a conversation with one of the higher ups at Red Bull, and they were discussing after Yuki's weekend. They just said, actually, it was after he binned it in qualies, and they said this is why he will never be a Red Bull driver. And they didn't release who said that, but the fact that it was said just proves the point that Yuki's just not the guy that they're looking for. And then you see somebody like Liam Lawson, who is gunning for that second Red Bull seat. And I think he's putting too much pressure on himself, because when he went out and had a ton of fun, and Colapinto went out and had a ton of fun, and there was no pressure on them, they had way better results. Like the results were in a much better, light compared to what happens when these guys are trying to push. And Lawson fighting for last place or whatever he was. I think he was 17th after Yuki bended in qualies. He started in 17th place, and it was just an absolute mess up trying to get up the grid. And I don't know if anyone saw, I'm sure you guys all saw him giving the middle finger to Checo as he drove by. Legend move. Can we just talk about how awesome that is?
Do you like that?
I think he forgot for that moment that he was racing in Formula One and not in F2, because they don't have all the driver cams like they do in Formula One. I bet you he was like, oh shit, I totally forgot where I was right now. I shouldn't have done that, because that's not a good look trying to gun for that Red Bull seat. Driving by Checo on his home race, flashing the bird. Come on, that's money. Is it classy? Nah, not at all. Could I have done without it? 100%. But now that it happened, am I here for it? Hell yeah.
I agree, dude. Like I see Liam Lawson as someone who's like a scrappy type of guy. Like he's gonna try to gun for that second seat, and I'm sure he's really trying. For the next few races, you're just gonna see him pushing and just taking the business to Checo and telling Marco and Horner, you guys got the wrong guy in that second seat. It needs to be me.
I already think he essentially has that seat. There's probably no more further discussion needed. I think he has that seat sealed. It's not Yuki, and we all know for reasons why it's not going to be Checo, because he sucks. He sucks absolutely, especially with this Grand Prix. Like he was nowhere to be found. He definitely wasn't in Mexico. Not sure where he was, but it wasn't his home race. Yeah, Lawson's got
too
that.
many tacos, buddy. He had too many tacos.
Sorry, just saying it how it is. So yeah, Lawson has a deal on that seat.
I don't know if I love how Lawson is operating, though, to be honest.
Okay.
And maybe it's because I feel like he needs to earn his place a little bit more. Maybe I didn't love the finger at Checo's home race, but he feels like he's driving a little bit angry and a little bit desperate. And maybe it's a bit of
He
a double
is.
standard, because sometimes I feel like we say that and we're like, oh yeah, like he's competing. But in this case, for your, what is it, your 6th race, I don't know, man. It didn't feel right to me, to Checo. And I don't
he was
necessarily,
trying too hard.
he was trying to, and I don't necessarily think that whatever Checo did, like, he really deserved that finger. Like, there people do way worse shit on track and don't give the finger. So it felt a little juvenile for me. And I feel like he can do better, especially if he wants to get that top seat, which he might have. Maybe it's locked in, like Thomas is saying, because I read somewhere else, some other random report, that apparently Colapinto might get a shot at the V-carb seat. So that would mean someone has to move on. And it might be Lawson. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. One person we haven't talked about today yet, almost 40 minutes into the episode, is the championship contender, Lando Norris. There was a lot going on in this race, and we want to talk about remarkable performances. I don't know. I know he finished 2nd, but it just felt like a bit of an unremarkable race and not really the type of race that you would expect from someone gunning for that championship. Just me?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, because like it's one of those scenarios where it was a good drive but not great. And what allowed him to stand up on the podium on the 2nd step was the fact that he was consistent and didn't lose his head, which is the making of a champion, right? So like I have seen some growth, because like getting back to that desperate conversation, there's been moments where Lando's gotten desperate, i.e. I can't remember that race that he crashed out with Max Verstappen in their first little debacle. Austria. Yeah. And that was him being desperate, and he learned lessons. And now that he has a legitimate title fight, I don't actually think it's a legitimate title fight. If we can just sidebar that for a second, I think, Max has kind of clinched that. Look at Ed giving me mad cut eye. I don't know if you're giving me cut eye or if that's just your eyes, bro. But like, let's get real here.
I am.
You are giving me cut eye. Yeah, I can't tell if you're giving me cut eye or just staring at me with a smile, my guy. Anyways.
No, this time I was.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think Lando's got a shot. But back to the main point here. I did think that Lando had a whelming race. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't underwhelming. It was just whelming. So,
you know what? Sorry, can I just say something quickly?
I don't think I have a choice now.
No, you don't. I'm going to take back what I said, because I just was praising Ferrari for being consistent and confident and things like that. And I feel like I need to change my opinion. I was just trying to stir the pot. But you know what? You're absolutely right. Lando wasn't driving desperate. He was like, it felt like a very grown-up race from him. So, I don't know why I felt the need to add that. Ed.
Well, I'm standing by my my call, and I still stand on it till today, that Lando is going to take away the Drivers' Championship.
You also said that McLaren was going to win the constructors.
Yes.
Okay.
They're going to take it all away.
Okay.
So
and I think the only reason you're saying this is because you don't have any money on it, so there's really just no skin in the game. Would you bet money on it?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would.
Yeah. It's his Oracle credibility that's worthless.
Yeah, it's true, because that means next season, after they don't win, you can't say anything. There's no prediction.
I can't say anything.
I meant priceless. Never mind.
But that's the thing, though. You have to put on a stand. Like, what are you really looking at? And for me right now, Lando needs to up the game. You're right, Drew. His performance this time was whelming. Not overwhelming, not underwhelming, but just whelming. But again, you're right too, that is a sign of a champion. He was consistent in the race. He knew that Max was going to go after him again and again and again. And he stood back and just let the rules flow, let the racing flow, and end up with P2. I mean, both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were like fantastic in terms of their pace. But Lando pushed Charles Leclerc to the extent of almost crashing his car. So for me, that is a big difference compared to how he was prior to the break. Like that's a big improvement. even if it's for everyone else, it looks just like but it's there. It's positively trending. So hopefully he will continue that in Interlagos, but I'm going to stand on it. McLaren's going to win this
I
this
read
year.
somewhere that Lando Norris needs to score 15 points in order to beat Max Verstappen, or 12 points or something like that. Anyways, they went through all the races. The most Lando has outscored Max in a race this year is 12 points. And that's when Max Verstappen DNF'd in Australia. The average that he's outscored him when he did was by like 3 or 4. Recently, as high as 8. So you're going to need a Max DNF or some sort of catastrophic something happening to Max consistently and Lando on the podium every single time in order for the math to math. So I don't see it. Like, I understand your want for it, and especially because you made the call a few weeks ago about being the Oracle, but just as far as the reality is concerned, let's bring it back in. I don't think the math is there.
The math isn't there, but mind you, there might be an issue with Max right now to change his engine. So he'll get that penalty. He'll start from the pit box too. Forgetting that. And then on top of everything else that's happening, I don't think he has the pace anymore.
All right, well, I hope
Sorry,
you're right.
Tomas.
So I think you guys are giving Lando a little bit of a hard time. I think he did what he was supposed to do this race. He showed up. He performed. He got second place, which is a little bit maybe underwhelming. But I think he did his best, and he got on that podium, and he deserved it. Drivers right now, Max is in the lead. I think he's gonna stay in the lead. I think he has that locked in. I don't think McLaren is gonna catch up. In regards to constructors, McLaren has this 1,000%. They're gonna win this. They have it locked down. But I do see an improvement from Lando, the way he performs, the way he races, and you can see that maturing prospect. You can see him becoming a real racer, a real driver, and you know, as you, Drew, said, just kind of let the rules flow and you know, essentially just follow them, and he's gonna end up where he ends up. Perfect example was the way he was pushing Charles Leclerc and almost made him crash. Right, that was very, very cool how much pressure he was putting on him and keeping his calm. So respect for Lando in regards to that.
So I don't know. I you know what? I wouldn't say McLaren has constructors locked in. They're 30 points behind, 29 points behind. That's a pretty easy swing with what is it? 4 races left now. 4 races left, and a couple of sprint races in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's locked in at all, especially with the way Piastri's been looking lately. He's had a couple of subpar performances based on his standards. So much to talk about. I feel like we keep talking about this race forever and ever and ever and ever.
It was a goodie.
It was a great race. It was a great race.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was 2
It was.
really strong back-to-back races. Lots to talk about, lots of content. We have another great race coming up, Brazil. That's always a fun track. That's always a great track. Lewis loves that track. This is going to be another exciting one. So much at stake. You know, it's barely mathematically possible, but there's still a chance. So keep hanging in there, Ed. Divine
I think weather's
intervention.
going to play a factor this weekend too, I heard.
Is it really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it extra fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, and is it a sprint race? It's a sprint race too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is Brazil? Yeah. So we got a sprint weekend, lots of racing, lots of running. It's going to be interesting because there's a whole question about like how they're going to set it up and who's going to get it right, who's going to get it wrong. So who knows? We could come back next Tuesday and everything could change. So time will tell. In the meantime, there's only one way to end an episode like this. That's with Name That Sponsor. No song?
No song.
Come on, Drew. No, okay, just a woo. It's a little Ric Flair
Just a
woo.
Ric Flair woo!
Game face is on.
Game face. Everyone's serious. It's getting close. The championships are getting close. The driver's standing. And the Formula One True North Name That Sponsor score is getting close. Right now, we have Drew in the lead with 21. Thomas making a strong comeback the last couple of weeks with 9. And Ed with 4. Anyone's game. If you guys don't know how this game is played,
Ed's
I'm
got
going to name
14, not 4.
14, excuse me. Chris is 4.
I was like 4. How did I
No,
lose?
14,
Did I get
14.
like?
How we play, I'm going to name a sponsor. You guys are going to tell me the car that they sponsor and what that company does. Really simple. A point for each correct answer. We're going to start off with Rydell. Or, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Rydell. Riedel.
Ridell.
Riedel. Rydell.
I am going to
Riedel.
say
Sorry. I don't know. Carry on, Thomas. Sorry.
Carry on. Figure it out. We'll figure it out.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna say McLaren, and I am what they do. They do finance operating system.
Alpine. They make tools.
I'm going to go with Aston Martin and equipment manufacturer.
Okay. I just looked it up. It's pronounced Riedel. Riedel. Does that change anyone's
Riedel.
answer?
Not a chance. No.
Okay.
No.
We all
we
have
are-
no idea what's going on.
You're all wrong.
Yeah.
They make wine glasses.
Oh.
Think of any wine glasses
Oh.
or tumblers you have. They are Riedel. Yeah. Riedel.
Yeah.
And they are on Visa Cash App. There you go.
Oh. Okay.
Wow.
Strong start.
Yeah, that was awesome, boys.
Strong
Way to go.
start. Okay. The second company is Vast. VAST.
Alpine and crypto, like banking transaction company, something like that.
Okay.
Aston Martin antivirus software.
Okay.
Let's go with Haas, and I think they are some sort of AI software engineering.
Okay. Okay, you drew that point there. So they are on Williams, and Vast is a privately held technology company that focuses on artificial intelligence and deep learning computing. So we'll give you AI.
AI.
Did you know that, or you just pull that out?
I research and stuff. So I had to
Okay,
get-
well, there you go. Look at that. Research paid off. Okay, last one. Let's see. It's a slow week so far. Arctic Wolf. Arctic Wolf.
Going to say Mercedes and winter clothing company.
I'm gonna go with Steak Sauber, and I think they make winter tires.
Don't do that.
Okay. Sorry.
Don't do that.
I would say Haas, winter clothing as well.
Okay. Zeros across the board. Arctic Wolf is part of Oracle Red Bull Racing, and they do cybersecurity.
My second guess.
You know what? This feels more normal. I feel the last
Yep.
few weeks you guys were killing it, and this just feels
Yeah.
like we're home again.
We're back to normal.
Back to normal.
Yeah. I love how you say you're like simple game, just name the car, and I'm like, this is the hardest simple game. I do appreciate how we all still honor that gentleman's agreement and do not do any research on this because we are all
no research.
fucking
no
clueless
research.
when it comes to these, which just
I love
further
it.
proves either A, you studied and don't remember and you're an idiot, or B, you're playing along real nice.
There we go. So that was 1 point for Drew, and everyone else, a couple of goose eggs. So 22 for Drew, 9 for Thomas, and 14 for Ed.
Extends the
That's
lead
it.
by 8.
There you go. 4 weeks left, boys. Come on, there's still time.
There's a mathematical chance though,
There's a
Ed.
mathematical.
Anything's still possible.
Anything's
That's it.
possible. Boys, that was a lot of fun. Don't forget, everybody, check us out on the Discord. Link is going to be in the show notes. Find us on all the socials. What else we want to say? Subscribe, tell your friends. And that's it. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
It's all she wrote, baby.
No, you're good.
That's it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. For myself, Walker, Drew, Thomas, and Ed, we'll talk to you next week.
It's lights out and away we go.